There are times in our life where we feel we are not enough, and in feeling we are not enough, it is safe to say we are subscribing to thoughts of scarcity. If focused upon that is scarcity, our will is weakened by carrying out actions we believe will resolve the false evidence appearing to support the claim that we are not enough. We are enough. So there is nothing to resolve. And the will weakened by putting forth the effort that was never called for. For example, you are told you need a degree to get the job you desire, only to learn at your interview that you never needed it. The thought most likely then will be, I did all that for nothing? And contemplating how you could have applied for the job years ago and been further along in your career will weaken the will, set in yet another memory of misinformation rather than victory, whereby trust in your inner guidance system is gained and self-confidence built. One may become skeptical by way of similar experiences. Having built a track record of quote unquote losses. So, what are we implying? Thoughts that speak to you of not being enough is misinformation. Misinformation that inspires you to carry out actions to counter those feelings of inadequacy. However, when you are called by the universe and made aware of what is really going on, you, like the interviewee, are going to learn you were always enough. So all the work you performed to prove otherwise was in vain, because being whole isn't something you become, it's something that you are. And the awareness of that is what you are gaining. It is what is being revealed to you. By the universe initiating that awakening, your being, quote unquote, chosen, speaks to you freely accepting that gift. And it is considered a gift because it's initiated not by us, but by God, removing the inclination to boast in one's ego. Instead, all glory belongs to God and is shared with those who receive when called. So, pretending to know we are enough before we are called isn't necessary. It isn't a qualifier. Any reasonable person knows they cannot fool God if they attribute God to awareness, to consciousness. Otherwise, it would seem one would think they can manipulate God, which would be futile. Better it is to acknowledge, I don't know, than to act like you know. And you know when you're acting because you're not confident. And you're not confident because the information you currently have is not adding up. It doesn't make sense to you. It's not necessary for us to call others out as to bring attention to their pretension, because that is a result of our knowledge of self, whereby we are automatically distinguished, considering our intentions match our behavior and or being. Going back to the beginning, there are times in our life where we feel we are not in love. Why is that? Most likely, if we were in a household that was very religious, we were most likely indoctrinated. If you didn't grow up in a religious household, you were indoctrinated through public schools. If you didn't go to public schools, you were indoctrinated by way of your community. Um, and it's far few in between that you will find those who were actually guided by parents who were conscious. Okay, so of course this resonates with myself because I know that there are things that I was told growing up that made me question my self-worth. Okay, and so moving on, and in feeling we are not enough, it is safe to say we are subscribing to thoughts of scarcity. If focused upon that is scarcity, our will is weakened, right? And it's weakened by carrying out actions we believe will resolve the false evidence appearing to support the claim that we are not enough. Okay? So, one may question, then, what is occurring here, when we are under that spell, if you will, or that illusion, and subscribing to misinformation that would cause us to be hard on ourselves and therefore try to remedy that which we are told requires fixing, right? One could imagine how much time and effort we have spent, depending on your age, countering things, or not even things, just the voices of our mother, the voices of our father, the voices of family, friends, colleagues, teachers, whoever had a major impact on your life. These are the voices you're coming up against. And what I've learned from my own personal experience, when we say that the universe has to initiate this awareness, we mean just that. It's not something that you do in a sense that you've become so clever or so wise in a sense that you got something that somebody else doesn't have. No, of course, somebody outside of ourselves has to bring this to our attention. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be in the scenarios that we have found ourselves to be in the first place. So we know that God, the universe, have to initiate this awareness, okay, this awakening, okay, in order us to see, or remove the smoke and mirrors that have caused us to see, ourselves in a distorted view, right? And so, with reflecting on these things, it brought me much comfort just understanding that, we don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to, it's not having it all figured out. It's not about having the one answer and everything like that. Because like I said before, and if you've listened to any of my other, postings, you will know that I'm one who knows that other people are going through their own individual journeys, right? So, this, what I'm sharing right now, may not resonate with some people because what? They haven't been initiated yet. They haven't been initiated. Doesn't mean that, possibly they could come across this information, log it away, and then it come back at a time when they do receive that initiation and then are like, oh, that's what she was talking about. Yes, possibly, because that has happened in my own personal life where I've heard people say certain things to myself that didn't make sense to me at the time, but later made sense when I came into a certain knowledge that allowed me to accept that information, right? So, what I'm seeing here is that God is sobering my mind with regards to this calling, right? Because we know that there's a lot of people coming out talking about chosen ones and the times we're in, and that's fine, but hopefully, when we do agree with others, that it's from a place of awareness and not jumping on someone's bandwagon because of whatever reason, right? But that we're really having communion with one another, if you will, because of the personal relationship we have directly with God ourselves, outside of social media, outside of the workplace, outside of the community. Like when you're by yourself, when you're doing what you need to do in your life, how are you tapping into source to make sure you are getting the things that you need in order to live your life and understand that you are on the right path, that you are well cared for, that you are loved, that if there is something that you need to know, it will be revealed to you. If you have a gap in your understanding concerning a certain issue or topic or anything else for that matter. That's why I said it's never about you having it all. It's never about having it all figured out. I don't. That's not what is being shared here. Not on my channel at least. That's not what it is. But what I'm definitely capable of sharing is that which I've received for myself, and have no doubt or question about, and then also being in the position to be so, I don't want to say, to be in that position of grace, right? To know that, like I said, just to know that if there's anything that I'm missing, that I will get the information I need to make that correction. It's not necessary for me to walk around here with my head down and, talking about, oh, I'm not doing this or I'm not doing that. Like that is not the catalyst for you to receive more information, right? It doesn't do us any good to be hard on ourselves, right? And so here I see the Spirit making clear, or bringing me back to the basics, if you will, just going back to the basics, because it's going to be very essential in my spiritual journey to remember these things as I come against different things that may challenge my station, if you will. Because I'm sorry, it's just interesting to know how far removed we were from the truth because of indoctrination, because of religion, and the roller coaster ride that it took us on, because it wasn't the truth. It wasn't the whole truth, right? It wasn't the whole truth, which is why you're constantly, or what I like to say, it has that wasting effect. It doesn't last. It doesn't carry over into a new level. Like it doesn't give you enough gas to get to the next level so you can glean whatever it is that you need to glean in that level to go on to the next level. No, it's going to keep you in a loop, on a level, in a loop, and on the same level, in the same goddamn loop, just looping, looper, just looping. That's all you're doing is looping, right? Until you get this information, until that initiation happens, and we wonder why initiation is so big when it comes to the system trying to imitate that. When it comes to societies and clubs and covens and groups, this herd mentality, this herd groupthink, way of living, you wonder why that is such a big thing. Initiation is a big thing amongst these groups, right? But you don't hear too many people supporting the fact that specifically God, can literally initiate contact with its creation. Go figure. Go figure. You mean to tell me God didn't need a middleman? No. The middleman was entered into history, right, in order to create obstacles, in order to create blockages. Because if you would buy into the idea that this middleman is the spokesperson for God, then that means anything they say or do, you're going to accept as God telling you what you need to do. And knowing man, right, in his lower nature, will find himself struggling to override this inclination to manipulate and control others to get what they want, knowing the ego is going to be puffed up in this situation. You wonder why we are in an age right now where you're seeing so many lies being exposed, right? Because this is when man decides to do things his way, right? Making himself to be bigger than God and convincing himself that he is somehow going to still walk off into the sunset like he's untouchable. And we know this to be far from the truth. So yeah, go figure that God at this time, if anybody is speaking by way of divine inspiration, it will never be for you to follow them. It will always be pointing you, to within, that you yourself may tap in and connect with source and have that personal relationship yourself, right? Yourself. That's what you're going to get from those who are being divinely inspired, because anything that we say, we're saying as an outflow of what we actually live, what we actually do, what we actually have a real experience of with the Most High. This is not something we're trying to prove, as many of us once were when we were indoctrinated, especially with religion, right? So it's a new day. It's a new day. You are enough. I know. Gotta fly over people's head. Like, what do you mean we're enough? We've been told we were sinners. We have to go. You have to repent. You have to go do this. You have to, pray. Confess. Listen. Here's the thing, because what Spirit has been telling me is first thing is first. First thing is first. Like, when you're dealing with babes, you're bringing it to the elementals. First thing is first. You don't really have to speak to appearances or the outward manifestation that you want to see, like the fruit, right? You don't have to give too much emphasis to that when the source, the connection to source is there, right? When you have a connection to source and it's there, You're not going to have to tell people, okay, you shouldn't hit a person. You shouldn't kill a person. You shouldn't do this. What does sacred text tell us? The laws of God were written on what? Their heart. Their heart. Their heart. Whose heart? Whose heart? Because last time I checked, it was saying the law was made for the lawless. The lawless. Who are the lawless? You know? Things that you can ask, that you can go to God yourself and ask, what is this? What is this about? But I'm just saying, first things first. That's what I'm constantly hearing, first things first. And I say that with confidence because that's exactly how I was approached, right? Where I knew it was God drawing me because I was drawn in love. I was drawn in understanding, not to pacify behaviors that are not beneficial to who I am, but with understanding, there is not this attitude of hurry up and get it done right. Hurry up and get it done right. Or I'm going to kill you. Or I'm going to burn you up in flames. Or like, it's interesting how we as humans, right, can do and want the best for our children, but all of a sudden when it comes to God, you fall into the trap of believing this bullshit that they have put out to express that this is how God feels about us. Yeah? As if that's the incentive you need to do what's right. Who needs this type of incentive to do what's right? This is what I'm talking about. What's this? Where does this idea come from? Where you really believe that unless you have some sort of harsh penalties, that's the only way a person is going to do what's right. Hence the reason why parents would whoop their kids, right? And slave masters felt justified in the very act of slavery. Right? Was not the Bible used as a justification to do these things? So who in their right frame of mind or with a reasonable mind attributes these things to a God who is a conscious being? A conscious being, not an ignorant being, but a very conscious being. And I'm sorry, not sorry, but like I said, personal experience, it outweighs anything. Like, you can't take my experience from me, right? I can't take somebody else's experience from them, right? Which is why I'm not hell bent on trying to make anybody do anything. If I share something, it's by way of my own personal growth and understanding gained in my own walk with God. Whether anybody accepts it or not has no weight on my continuance in this way. That right there is liberating in itself. It's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful experience. So, so I know some people may have a hard time. Oh, I think it ran out. Did it run out? I know some people might have a hard time with that, because abuse is relevant to many of our experiences. So when you actually have love pursuing you, because that's how I look at it, like being called is love pursuing you. So many people out here is like, man, I just wish someone would look at me and just see me as something worth loving. And that, my friend, might be nice, right, in the physical, right? But it's even more greater when it comes from the one who created you. So that you, in turn, won't require this necessarily from other people because it's already happening within you. Whether or not you end up in a relationship or not with someone else to have that experience, it's not going to be devastating if you don't. Because that's how serious and that's how profound the love of God is. It settles all scores. It settles all scores. So being called, when they say many are called but few are chosen, many, I want to say all, are pursued by love, the love of God. But not many receive it because the indoctrination has told them, you're not good enough. This can't be God behind this information, because this information ain't telling you how horrible you are and how you need to go and take a bath, a spiritual bath. You need to go take a spiritual bath, and you need to get baptized, and you need to go in this water, by the way, that has a whole bunch of fishes that are shitting in the water and all types of creatures and everything, but you need to go in this bath so that God will accept you. Right? So many are pursued by the love of God, but not too many, but few accept that gift, because few really know they deserve that. They know they deserve that. So much so that even as I'm talking right now and people are possibly going to hear this, that they're okay with the rejection of others and how others may view them. That's how profound this love of God is, that if I'm rejected by mother, father, sister, brother, cousin, grandma, grandpa, uncle, auntie, society, job, nigga, I got God. And if God be for me, nigga, who's gonna be against me? Huh? Who's gonna be against me? Who's gonna put me in a frenzy to have me questioning my self-worth? When God has already put that stamp of approval on me. Who? You? Oh, maybe you? Oh, you who actually claim to be called of God to come tell me that I'm not what I say I am. Yeah? So again, going back to the notes, and this is why Spirit put this on my heart at the end, because I was like, why are we taking it there? But now I know, even as I'm reflecting now, it's not necessary for us to call others out. You know why? I don't have to call you out. That's not that's the way of the religion. That's the way of indoctrination. That's the way of projection. That's the way of falsifying virtue or forcing virtue. I ain't got to call out nobody, as to bring others' attention to what that person is doing, right? Because my knowledge of self now, whereby I'm automatically distinguished because of my fruit, right? Because of the way I carry myself, the way I even the way I speak. You know what I mean? It matches my intention. I don't have to, if it happens, it happens, but I tell you right now, nobody's getting on here to call nobody out as if that's the means to my awareness. That's not a means to my awareness. Awareness brings forth discernment. Discernment consequently allows you to see things as they are. And when you speak on it, of course, it's going to make it very clear to those who have an ear to hear to see the difference. So it's not that we come out here to call others out as if that is the calling, right? To call you out, nigga. No, right? I wasn't pursued by the love of God by being called out. I was pursued by the love of God to understand who the fuck I was. That's why I was called out. That's why I was pursued, was to show me who I was, because the understanding is a lot of behaviors, if you wish to speak to the moral code, a lot of these things are perpetuated by way of your lack of knowledge of yourself. So God, being the all-intelligent being that it is not going to first and foremost bring your attention to your behavior, right? As if you're in a momentum of showmanship as to show others who you are, and like he's like parents today, like, oh, you're embarrassing me. Get yourself together because you're embarrassing me. God, you can't, do you know how, we're talking about God here. We're not talking about a parent who has flaws and, you know, may not know certain things or whatever. We're talking about God. God ain't embarrassed by you. Because first of all, you ain't even going to be in a position of representation until you accept the gift of love. Once you accept that gift of love, which fulfills the law, all things fall into place. All things are added on to you. So God is not pressed by your behavior embarrassing the divine. Like, who's the other side? Who's the other people that you... Okay, if God is in charge, the one, who the hell are you? You're cutting up, if you will. You know how our parents are. Oh, you embarrass me? You cutting up? Who are you cutting up for that God is trying to impress? Who are you cutting up for, or considered to be cutting up for, that would embarrass God too? Who is it? Who's watching God? Who's surveilling God? Who's keeping checks and balances on God? Who's saying, hey God, yo, you might want to listen? And even if they were in that position to say something like that, should we, I'm thinking, should we be following that person? Because God is even caring about how this person thinks about it. So that's why we said what we said. That's why we said what we said. That's why we said what we said when we said, and I'm finding it now. Give me a second. Any reasonable person knows they can't fool God. If they attribute God to awareness, right? To consciousness, you can't fool God. So why would God be pressed at your behavior? Wouldn't this God know that, yeah, I actually made you, and I understand how these things work, and I understand how certain fruits are cultivated. So what I would do is I'm going to bring your attention to the cultivating, to how it's birthed, to how it's seeded. I'm never going to sit here and whoop you about the outcome, because it's always going to be a need to go back to the basics to help you see how that happened, how it manifested, right? Because I'm consciousness, I'm awareness, I know what's going on, right? This is why parents or adults who operate in wisdom, we admire them because it speaks to the God code. It speaks to that godliness. It speaks to God. When a parent can break down something and not be like disturbed or overreacting or over emotional, not because they're suppressing their feelings, but because they what? They understand. Understanding doesn't mean that I'm justifying what you're doing. I'm not approving of what you're doing, but I understand why you did what you did. Okay, so I would never bring your attention to the act. I'm always going to bring your attention to the means by which you got to that end. So that if that is something that you are not proud of, which I know you're not because you're made in my image, and I didn't design you to be comfortable in that, okay, then you'll know what to do next time based on this experience. My job as God is to love on you because that's what I do. I'm going to constantly remind you of whose you are and who you are, because that's the only thing that's going to help you realize that these things right here are beneath you. You're better than that, right? You're better than that, right? And we love that. We love when we see stories like that or movies depicting parents like that, because it goes beyond this emotionalism and it goes straight to understanding, and it kills all the doubt about, oh, is this person just trying to get over? They don't care about their kids. They don't care what their kids do. No. No. See, that's not what that is. It's understanding cause and effect. The law of correspondence, right? These laws of the universe is understanding these things that allow us to operate in our divinity and reap the benefits of that. So it's never a matter of if you're worthy. It's never a matter of if you deserve that. It's never a matter of that. It's a matter of awareness. And that is always initiated by God. Right? This glory does not go to the ego. It doesn't go to studying. It doesn't go to none of that. That has to be initiated by God, because that does something to us. And it hits us right where it needs to. So much so that when we really get it like this, my friend, you show the same courtesy for others. You really do. You really do. And you show the lack of tolerance that you will have for excuses. You will. Because you know without a shadow of doubt what is possible. Right? There's a flip here, right? Where others will say, they've kind of distorted love. You know what I mean? They've distorted love. The tolerance thing has become, oh, if you love me, you will allow me to hurt you. You will allow me to abuse you. You will allow me to do what you will forgive me. You will just keep putting up with this. No. That's not, see, when you get this love of God, okay? No, there won't be no tolerance of that which does not match us. And when I say match us, I mean who we truly are. There will be no tolerance for anything less. We know this to be true, right? That's where the whole saying comes from, looking for love in all the wrong places, because no matter what you do, no matter how much you eat that food, no matter how much you have sex with that person, no matter how much you engage in extracurricular activities, no matter how much you distract yourself, that void will always be felt until you come into that experience of truly being pursued by the love of God. Hmm? Hmm? To bring you back. Not that it was never there, but you got to understand with others putting out a massive misinformation campaign globally to take you away from that. This is why the initiation was prophesied. This is why one would say many are called but few are chosen. Because we know the contrast exists. We know that there are others out here pushing a different agenda, completely against what God wants for us. And it's nothing you need to be concerned about or fearful about. You really don't. Because, like,
Yeah, I was getting it in before I realized that I was no longer recording. So I had to go back and look at where I left off at. So the last thing we were saying here was that just understanding the contrast that exists, right? It's never that it was never that the love of God didn't exist for us, right? But we know because of certain what did we say before? Misinformation campaigns pushed to pull us away from that knowing. When you think about, for instance, slavery, and knowing that the children who no longer have the parents who would be able to pass these things down to them, and being heavily indoctrinated with other forms of information, this is what I mean, that it was prophesied, right? So when we speak of initiation, we must know that this awareness, this awakening has to be initiated by God, because otherwise we would already caught on with that. The moment we started to experience that, we would have been able to counter that, right? Or, and some have, don't get me wrong, some have more than others, despite the household that they grew up in. They very much endured a lot of hardship from the people around them, and some of them being so strong in that awareness of self, although cast aside as the black sheep of the family, they remain true to themselves, right? And not to say that they didn't have any doubt or question what they knew. There are many who were strong in their own right to not succumb to the outlook or perception of those who were speaking ignorance, whether that came from the oppressor or their own family members, right? So I'm reminded of my own personal experience. I can speak from experience. I don't see initiation as a one moment thing. Like when somebody's like, "Oh, they're getting initiated," it's like it happens this one time in your life and that's what just sets it off. No, if I were to be honest with myself, it's been a kind of like, I don't want to say, kind of like a courting, right? It's kind of like the more I was honest, the more my heart was in alignment with what I was asking. Like if I asked something and my heart was in the right place, it seemed like that's when I would get answers, right? So it was like these little experiences that happened here and there throughout my life, right? And I'm able to say that because I remember times where I may have wanted answers, but my heart wasn't in the right place. For instance, and I'm sure many can relate, pursuing God because you learn that if you don't, you going to hell, right? That's where a lot of hardship came in. A lot of, when I say hardship, I mean being really hard on myself, like being really hard on myself, and in turn, generating a lot of feelings I feel that worked against me. And right now I'm trying to look up the scripture, but if I can't find it, and I'm pretty sure those who are familiar with the church will know what I'm talking about. But it's the scripture that I'm reminded of is the one with regards to how I think it's in the book of Revelations in the different churches. And the church in particular where it said that you make the people worse than what they were before they came in contact with you. You know, that's paraphrased. That's me paraphrasing what I understood from that scripture. So that's how I describe my experience. It was like there were things that weren't a problem for me before I got really, really involved with the church. And it wasn't until my experience with the church and believing in that type of doctrine that I feel like I got to a very dark place, you know. And what I mean by dark, I mean there was like a lack of self-control. You know what I mean? Like it was more of a lack of self-control and feeling like I can't do this. So it's kind of like how they say when, you know, when you're tyrannical, like when you have a tyrant, like pushing a lot of laws and rules and stuff like that, people tend to want to go out and break that, right? Because you're saying you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. And it's like something inside you is like, yeah, oh, I can't do that. And it's like, it's as if it's it's generating an energy within you to want to break those rules, right? That's the best way I can describe it. It's like it gets to a point where when you're doing your best. You know what I mean? You can't, it's not a matter of going to someone asking them, hey, am I doing my best? No, this is something you should know. You know, when you know you're praying every day, when you know you set a schedule and you're reading and you're studying and you're involved and you're participating and you seem to be the type of person that gets laughed at and not the person who is like looked up to or like you know what I mean? Like I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that can relate to what I'm saying. It's like, wait a minute, like, you know how, what it feels like when you know you giving something your all. Like I don't think only people who know what you know what I mean, that actually do that know what the hell I'm talking about. When you know you actually doing a lot of stuff and you challenging yourself and you pushing yourself, you know what I mean? To be like, yo, I'm listening to what this person's saying. I'm eating it up. I'm listening to everything you say. I'm eating it up because I want to be the best. I want to be the best for God. I want to show. And then on top of that, that underlying the fear of like, and I don't want to go to hell. Okay. I don't want to burn up. Like, you know what I mean? But you know, I can say at some point in time, it wasn't always about that. You know what I mean? It was more about having a family, a group of people around you who were driven by the same thing, more like culture, something that we a lot of blacks don't have unless you are involved in the church, or you come from a family that is very connected to their roots, like whether you're Jamaican or you're African or something like that. If not, church is the big cultural thing for us in America as blacks. Like, that is something that is really big. If you're not involved with that and you're more on the I can't think of the word, on the more educational side, and maybe your family is more prestigious when it comes to education, so you go to the best schools and you're in that crowd and it's about sororities and that type of stuff, like, you know what I mean? So your mom and your grandmother were, AKAs and all this other things or whatever. Like, for me, church brought that family unit type of thing. Not to say that my family didn't do stuff, but that was more on the American side of cookouts, birthdays, things of that nature. And not to say that the church wasn't that way either, but it was a way, it was family. It was family. But so when I say that I have contrast in my life to know that, or experience to know that when my questions were answered, it didn't mean that they came right away or that it was quick. I'm just saying, I noticed when my heart was in the right place, that's when I would get the answer. But if it was about ego, if it was about impressing others, I didn't get an answer, right? So looking back at that, I can say initiation was never like a one-time thing. I felt like it was a wooing. Initially, it's a wooing. It's like God is like allowing you to get hotter and hotter and giving you confirmation of that, like that hot and cold game that we used to play. You'd be like, oh, you're getting hotter. When you hide something, not to say that God's hiding anything from us, but when we used to play that game and you would hide something, the person had to find it, and you'd be like, you're getting hotter, you're hotter. Or was it that you had to close your eyes? I don't remember. But anyways, if you got close to the thing that you were supposed to find, you would say you're getting hotter. You're getting hotter, you're getting hotter. So that's how I felt that initiation occurred, was like over periods of questions being answered here and there, and a momentum building to a point where it's like almost like I said, all like it's like God wanting to court you. And I don't mean in like a sick, like a relationship. Like, you can use a relationship as an analogy to bring it home, but that's pretty much how I'm illustrating this. It's like getting to know someone, right? It's like God saying, I want to come back into a relationship with you. It's been severed. You don't know it, but I'm going to assist in you becoming aware of that by way of your own free will. You know what I mean? Free will is being demonstrated in your heart space. So when you're actually desiring or yearning for an answer, and the intentions are pure, right? Meaning they align with who you truly are. That's when those keys, they're like keys unlocking a part of you and giving you what you need to become aware of what is real, right? To the point, like I said, that momentum just starts building, because the more you get to taste that, the more you are able to identify when that type of entree, if you will, is being served to you. So you get, in a sense, your confidence becomes stronger in rejecting things that really don't align to that. So much so you get to a place of where it's like very clear as to who is speaking to you. Even as you see right now, myself and others are speaking to our personal experience with God, right? Not to say that my experiences in the past were not real. It's just that there was a lot of fogginess there because of the indoctrination and misinformation that distorted my view of God, right? So like a marriage or like a relationship, it's like the more time you spend with someone and you actually ask questions to get an understanding, the more you start to get a better picture of who this person is, right? And that's how I feel. And that's what I know with regards to God. Like when I say initiation is not a one-time thing, it's a pursuing, right? And us saying that, for me, I could say what my understanding of being chosen is you receiving that, right? And it getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper to the point where, like I said, it would make sense as to why some people would be like, oh, we're not all the same, in the sense that we're not all going through the same thing with regards to our own individual journeys back to source, right? Some of us more than others are in a more deeper relationship because of the experiences, whether this lifetime or a past lifetime, have accumulated much wealth, spiritual wealth, if you will, to where you can unlock a lot of, when you are unlocking things, you unlock a lot of stuff because you're starting to realize, hey, I've done this work before. It's just that blockages were created this lifetime to assist in not allowing me to remember that, because of the benefit and the impact that I would have on my environment, by way of knowing, by way of being aware of who I truly am and in the Creator's eyes, right? And it can go so much deeper, but we're not gonna get too far ahead in this one because I don't wanna cause any confusion. But I definitely can go into other things right now just based on what I just said. But yeah. It's so interesting because it was so good when I was saying this before, and I'm trying to remember what I said, and it stopped recording, of course, but it was so good. But yeah, I was just reminded of the illustration of the relationships, like the way God is painted out to be such a simp is ridiculous. When you become aware, you see how ridiculous the information that is spread abroad about God is, right? They made God to be out to be a simp. Like, God is like these men who, like, imagine, and you can imagine it because it happens already. You don't even have to imagine. I'm pretty sure you've seen videos confirming this on social media where let's just say a guy is into a girl, right? And he's like, hey, I want to take you out and everything, and I would like to date you, and if you wouldn't mind. And the girl's just like, yeah, I'm not quite feeling that. I'm not sure. So I'm gonna have to say that a no, right? And he's like, no, but I really like you, and I just want to show you a good time. I think you're great, and I think you deserve to be cared for, and I want to care for you, girl. I want to take care of you. I want to look out for you, all this stuff. And she's just like, nah. And he's just like, well, how am I supposed to get to know you if you don't give me a chance? And she's like, I'm sorry, I'm just not feeling this, right? And then he goes, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to throw lighter fluid on you and I'm going to light a match and I'm going to burn you on fire. You know, if a woman told you a story like that, you would be like, what in the fuck? What? He said what? Yeah, girl, he said he was going to pour gasoline fluid on me and then light a match and throw it on me so I could burn, because he was that angry at the rejection. Y'all make God to sound like this. You really do. And you don't give any attention to the fact that the doctrine you embrace was actually put together by human beings, capable of lying, capable of cheating, capable of stealing, capable of murder. You don't acknowledge the character of these people who have no shame in putting their name on the front cover of these books. You don't question none of this. All you continue to do in ignorance is attribute certain things you may read to one book, right? And then not even for a second use your cognitive critical thinking skills to acknowledge how far removed you are from reality. Because if you, being a mere human being, have children and want the best for your children and wouldn't do this to your own kids, why would you justify God doing that to us? And don't you dare say, well, God is different. No. Exactly. Of a higher intelligence, of less emotionalism to the point of understanding. And then you wonder why it's so hard for you to see people as they are for what they did. Not only to you right now, present day, but to your ancestors. It makes me think about when the prophets used to say, or even was it Jesus too in the scriptures, he would say, woman, what do you say? You should be weeping for you and your children, because these men, yeah. So it's like I said, when I really sit and think about it, I'm like, wow, we really sized you up to be a simp, God. Like, really, like God is out here desperate for a relationship. Like, he is simp. Like, he's so desperate that he's like, you know what? I'm gonna kill all y'all. You don't want to give me the respect I deserve? I'm killing all y'all. Who that sound like? No, really, stop and think about it for a minute. Who does that sound like? You don't give me what I want. I want it now. I want a relationship with you right now. I'm trying to love up on you, girl. I like you. And you sitting here rejecting me? How dare you? I ought to slap you in the face with this brick. I ought to hit you upside your head with this skateboard. You gonna reject me? Who that sound like? Because it sure don't sound like an all-knowing, all-seeing, loving, wise, right, intelligent God. That seemed like someone who's bothered, who finds their security in things outside of itself. As if the very creation gives value to itself. Not the other way around. Which is why the initiation is such a hard thing to swallow for some, and why few are chosen, because you attribute that to falsehood. Ain't no way God gonna send me love messages. Ain't no way God is doting on me, reminding me of who I am and just waiting for me to come around, you know, giving me gems here and there to see just how wise this God is. Y'all make God out to be a simp. We made him out to be a simp. A straight up simp. And he is far. She is far. Yeah? From that. So yeah, if you want to say, oh, well, you shouldn't question God. You should just do what God said, all this other stuff or whatever, because God's thoughts is not our thoughts, nor his ways our ways. Yeah, higher. Because that doesn't that sound like the Christ? Because if you can do this for your kids, why wouldn't you think the Most High would not do this for you? You go out of your way to do what you do. Right? And I'm not talking about the stuff that's out of wisdom, right? Where you know what I mean? When you're enabling your kids. I'm talking about the stuff that you actually do to assist them. What makes you think that God's way isn't superior to that, in the sense that it goes way far beyond that? And if we're going to sit here and acknowledge that, yeah, we're not going to have everything figured out, because it's not about that. It's not about having everything figured out. It's just about having that awareness of yourself, to know who you are and to know whose you are. So if at any time you start to re-question that again, you know exactly what needs to be done, because you've been initiated, right? You understand what? You've been back to the basics. Your foundation is what? Firm. Right? So understanding we're in an environment, like I said, where you have others with a different agenda going against what God has established. Yeah, you're going to come against some contrast. So there's going to be times where you gotta remind yourself, do this in remembrance of thyself. Because it's in knowing thyself, you are acknowledging the Christ consciousness within you. Because that's what has risen. Do you get this? Like, listen, whatever. I said whatever because I know this ain't no convincing session, but really, yeah, that pursuit of the love of God, it really truly is like I said, it's like a wooing to a courtship, to a relationship, to a marriage, to, you know what I mean? To, because when, what happens when marriage, that's when the procreation starts happening. Now you bearing the fruit. Yeah. Now you got that seed bearing fruit. Right? This is all analogies. So yes, some of us are further along in our journey than others. It's not to say that we better or one is worse. It's just to say, hey, when you know better, you just have to do better. And when you do better, when you know better, you're held more accountable. And it's not a scary thing, because like I said, when you just know. It rids you of fear. It doesn't create fear, because you know. You're like, oh, okay. It's way different than what we experience in the flesh, where you're like, I don't know if I can do that. Well, if that happens, like I said, you're going to have another experience by which you can ask certain questions. Certain things are going to be on your heart regardless. And if the intentions is right, you're gonna unlock some doors within yourself that allow you to gain access to certain information. Right? Yeah. And now we see why it's said, nothing but the pure in heart shall see God. It's not about perfection. It's about a sincere desire. Sincerity, honesty. Honesty don't mean you around here always doing you perfect, in a sense that you don't do things that you may change later because you see that it's more beneficial for you to change. That's not what it's about. Purity of heart is not about you finally reaching a point in your life where this is it. There's nothing left for me to do. No. It's about sincerity, about honesty. Your intentions are pure. You really want to know. I think that's why so much emphasis was given on the disciple that Jesus truly loved, because it wasn't about all the other stuff. It was about sincerely knowing. I just want to know. I want to know you. And we're all touched by this, aren't we? When we think about like romantic comedies or romantic movies where it's just like they show a contrast between a person in a relationship that was like very superficial and then they finally get the courage to leave that relationship, and then that opens up a door for them to meet somebody that actually likes them, and they're in awe because it's just like, damn, if I never left this, or if I never believed that I actually deserve to have a reciprocal relationship, I would have never came across this. And then we watch the movie and we see them and how they depict this, where the person is like totally into the person. It's so seamless. It's so effortless because it's just genuine. It's honest. It's pure. It doesn't mean that they're never going to say something or do something that might not upset each other. But the initiation, which is going to be the foundation of building upon that, relationship, is freaking pure. I actually like you. Right? And again, we always see it. Like I said, just like you have people, few are chosen, because few will receive that love of God, because the others will think, this is too unreal. This is too unreal. This is not real, because of the indoctrination. This is not real. This don't exist. Everybody is out to get each other. Everybody lies on each other. Everybody cheats. Everybody. So when you actually get somebody that actually looks out for you or likes you or talks to you sincerely, you don't get it. And it's the same thing, like I said, with God. God be sitting there wooing you with love, even sending situations in your way or whatever. And what do? You don't receive it. Many are called, but few are chosen. Many are pursued by the love of God, but few receive it. Few receive it because they're going to allow the indoctrination to they're going to allow the indoctrination to make them wax cold. And they're going to use that as a justification to wax cold. Instead of waxing hotter, like we said earlier, like that game, right? You're getting closer. They're just going to keep rejecting to the point of, like we said, you hear so many saying this. This is where you're going to see the gap. This is where you're going to see the separation. It's not going to be very hard to discern who's for God and who isn't. Because those who are receiving the love of God, of course, they're going to be on fire in a good sense. And the ones that don't, well, they're going to get very cold. They're going to get very cold. If you thought narcissism was a problem, I mean, you just think about when a person just have finally accepted the fact that, so much so that they're just like, there's nothing, there's nothing, there's nothing worth being honest about. There's nothing worth having integrity about. There's nothing worth being nice to people about. None of this. There's nothing worth me entertaining any thoughts that would even remotely speak to my greatness. Yeah. So it doesn't, it just does not, it would not surprise me, considering free will and considering God is not in the business of forcing people's will to accept that love. Then you gotta know there's going to be people that are going to represent that rejection. So, yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thanks for listening. Until next time, peace.